Welcome to Outside Sales Talk, where we meet with industry experts to learn the strategies and tactics that make them successful. I'm your host, Steve Benson, and I've helped thousands of salespeople all over the world crush their quota. Today, I'll help you crush yours. Welcome back to Outside Sales Talk. Today, I'm with George Leith, and we're going to talk about leveraging your online reputation to increase sales. So welcome to Outside Sales Talk, George.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate being invited. Looking forward to spending some time and talking sales. It's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear what you have to say for our listeners here. So by way of introduction, George is the Chief Customer Officer and Executive Vice President of Sales at Vendasta, which is an award-winning platform that helps companies sell digital marketing solutions to local businesses. Businesses. I always read the introductions, and I'm really not that good at reading. I'm better at talking. Should really work on that. Back to kindergarten. George is also the host of the Conquer Local podcast, and their mandate is to help organizations sell digital solutions to SMBs by providing them insider knowledge and best practices from industry experts. George has been in sales for over 30 years, and he helps businesses adapt their sales and marketing strategies for the digital era. Really excited to hear what you've got today for us, George.
Well, and Steve, we should mention you were a guest on the Conquer Local podcast a month or so back. So it's good to see you again, and looking forward to talking about this exciting topic.
I like it. Coming full circle, right? Well, first question, George, how is digital marketing changing the outside sales process, and which areas are being most affected?
Wow. Where do we start? I think every industry on the planet is in some sort of digital transformation. I think that really things started to change about 10 years ago. We traded in our BlackBerries and our Palm Pilots for iPhones and Androids at that time, and we had a computer in our pocket, and it changed our access to information. We were able to research things. It changed where all of us now, whether we're individuals or we're businesses, we have a virtual doorway, which in a lot of cases is more important than the actual doorway. I like to tell business owners that you don't have a hope of getting them in the actual doorway if you don't have a great virtual experience, because we were going to do a bunch of research. I'm sure that the moment that people started listening to this podcast and heard the name, they went to a LinkedIn profile or a website or did a Google search to say, why should I dedicate my hard-earned time to this old white-haired Canadian guy named George Leith? And in the moments to follow, they're going to know as much about me as anybody just by doing that quick little. So when you think about that for a moment, that really changes the game in sales, where they probably know a lot about you before you even walk through the door. And I see that on my LinkedIn profile all the time. I know if I'm going to a meeting, whether it's a virtual meeting or an actual meeting with a client, I see them on my LinkedIn profile ahead of time. I actually have that same functionality on my personal brand website, where I can see what organization has landed on my website before. So that, all of that technology that is there is giving us either a competitive advantage or might be placing us at a disadvantage if we're not participating in that arena.
Absolutely. How would you define today's digital buyer? And what's the best way for an outside salesperson to connect with them online?
Well, buyers, whether they're digital or in person, are smarter than they've ever been about the things that they want to buy. Talking to salespeople, and I've been a salesperson my entire life, is not usually a very good experience, unfortunately. We all can think about salespeople that we've talked to where it was a horrible experience. So I think that we need to have that lens, that we have to bring value. Plus, time is something that it's interesting. We have all this technology that was supposed to make it easier for us and give us more time, but it's just more things that are competing for that time. And in order to have a constructive conversation with a potential buyer or an existing customer, you better damn well bring some value. or it's going to be a very short conversation, or it'll be very difficult to get a conversation at all.
Absolutely. How, tell me about how a great digital presence can help salespeople to speed up their cycle and build better connections.
Well, if you think about that, a buyer, and this is a piece of data that is for a consumer, but I think it applies. It might even be a little amplified in a B2B type environment. So I'm sure that you have salespeople here that sell to consumers, and they also sell to other businesses. But when we think about a digital presence, if it was built properly, and one of my good friends, Dennis Yu, is probably one of the best resources to teach you how to build a really good digital presence. I think it can greatly accelerate the sales process, because you don't have to go in and do a bunch of qualifying. Not saying that you shouldn't do some qualifying, but I think the buyer actually does the qualification ahead of time. Doesn't mean that we don't have to go in and have a great presentation and a great elevator pitch and be able to answer objections and have case studies. And, you still have to have those components. But I think that a lot of times the buyer is going to disqualify you if they don't see the digital presence that they're looking for. And again, you've got to be better than what's in your universe. So if you're in a universe where you're competing with people who have amazing digital profiles and you don't have one, I think you better, start looking for another job, because this just isn't going to work out for you. And that's really where we're at. The people with the best digital profile online are winning deals, because they are offering that value way before they ever get in front of the customer to start doing needs analysis or presentation or trial. They have out online. I just mean on a website. I mean like on LinkedIn, and if your buyers are watching TikTok right now, well, maybe you should be involved. Or if your buyers are all on Snapchat, you should be involved. It's finding the right conduit to communicate with the potential buyer, giving them a bunch of things and value ahead of time, making sure that stuff's staying up to date. It's funny that you're bringing this up, because just yesterday we were talking about this on a podcast that we were recording. It's never done, because when you go on a sales call face-to-face with a customer on a call, and you come up with a new objection that you're going to have to overcome, or someone requesting a new piece of value, go change that in the digital profile so that other buyers that match that audience are able to see that new iteration of what the value proposition might be. So, I watch we advise digital sellers and organizations that, that online presence is an ever living, breathing thing, and it needs to constantly be adapted, added to, and more value put there so that your potential buyers can consume that ahead of time.
Yeah, that is so important. And it's funny you bring up TikTok. I was just in a meeting with my marketing team the other day, and someone brought up TikTok, and we were like, okay, this is such a huge trend right now, but are our buyers on TikTok? And we're like, a field salesperson, it's probably a little outside of the demographic TikTok's going after right now, but who knows in, a year what TikTok ends up being. And so we were looking at it. We've got a pin in that right now, but so we're not doing anything now, but we may toss a few videos on there, if like, sales training or something. But we're always trying to do what you're talking about, work on our digital presence. And we believe that the average person that buys Badger Maps has done at least 70% of their research before they ever talk to anyone over here. So it's all about, giving them the ability to learn what we do for them on our website, and having the right videos so they can see the product in action, and really showing them. Our challenge is a lot of people show up knowing we do one of the 5 things that we do. And so what's so important with our web presence is showing them all the different values that they get. And so that's our challenge in this area. Tell me, what would you say, in your opinion, the 3 most important but not obvious things that a sales rep or a company can do to improve their digital presence? So the union of important and not obvious.
Well, that's a great question. And as I ponder my response, I want to blurt out the word blog. Because I think that it's super friggin' obvious, but not a lot of people even do it, and do it with consistency. I look at digital marketing is the reason why there's, the reason why there's New Year's resolutions, and the reason why people go on diets, and the reason why we have these bursts where we go to the gym. We all know we need to do it. Like, it's been inundated, don't eat so many carbs, eat more leafy greens, don't drink too many beer, go to the gym. But it takes an enormous amount of discipline to do that on a day-to-day basis, because we're being inundated with all these, I saw a cinnamon bun that looks great yesterday, and I haven't eaten a cinnamon bun in 4 years, but damn, I wanted that thing.
They're
so
delicious.
My point is blogs are an obvious thing, but it's not like we look at organizations and sales professionals and say, wow, they're all amazing bloggers, so let's take that off the list. Or even on the value proposition on a website, where it comes to what does the product do or the solution do, and the deep dive, so that I could consume it when I want to consume it. You're like, oh, how long ago did Al Gore invent the internet? It seems like websites should be something that everybody just has nailed down. But it's not. And I think that part of the reason why some of these things that should be obvious, and because they're so important, is because it changes so much. So you may have built a great website 4 years ago, but that flash video is not doing very well for you for a long time. So, staying on top of the trends and finding trusted experts that can help you navigate those is a really important equation. The other thing that I think is becoming more obvious for certain age groups is that you better be learning. So, before I arrived at the tech company that I'm involved in today, I was in the traditional media space. So in the traditional media space, if you listen to Tony Robbins and you listen to Zig Ziglar and you got some motivation, and maybe you found some great presenters online that you could figure out, yeah, you're pretty good, and you just follow that path. But there's a whole new generation that love learning and are consuming information all the time because it's easy to get their hands on. And as an old gray-haired salesperson, I had to adapt to be a constant learner, or I would not be doing what I'm doing today. I would never have survived in the business that we're in today, in the software business, because you need to constantly be consuming new information. So those are the three things, blogging, and it's not blogging. It's putting content online that your audience would want to consume, that positions you as the trusted expert. And then there's this idea of web presence. Well, let's take web presence and let's lump it into things that you could earn, meaning you're going to have a great online presence if you earn it. You have to be engaged in LinkedIn. You have to be on maybe other social media channels that make sense for your audience. You have to have a website that functions well. And then that final piece that is definitely not obvious for a whole bunch of salespeople out there, depending upon the industry, but there are people who are getting this and are good at it. That's learning and constantly learning new things to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. What would you say some of the things that a salesperson can do to learn more and to get a healthy online reputation? So what should they be learning, and then what should they be doing if they want to improve their online reputation?
Yeah. So, the way that we present this to business owners, because we've done a lot of work with business owners on their digital presence, I see reputation as, let's talk first what online reputation is. It is the oldest form of advertising on steroids. So when I first started selling advertising, I went and called on a client, and, I was 18. I was probably 17 at the time, so I had no idea what I was doing. And I went to try and sell them some advertising. They said, you should sell word of mouth, because that's the best form of advertising. And that's what online reputation is it's your word of mouth on steroids. And it's very easy for a buyer to go online and make a comment, and now that lives online, and you have to know what to do with it. Now, if it's a positive comment, you're going to want to amplify it, and you're going to want to get more of them. If it is a negative comment, you're going to want to deal with the problem, and try and talk to the person that left it so that they might change that. And I get asked that by business owners all the time. Oh, I got a negative review. What do I do with it? Last thing you should do is put your head in the sand and ignore it, because it's doing damage to you. Nobody wants to go to a 3.5 out of 5 barber. Like I'm sorry, when it comes to cutting hair, you've got to get that thing, even 4, I don't know if I would go. So when they're doing that level, when you think about the buyers doing that level of research, we've talked a lot about that in the last few minutes. They're going to go to a review site. Pretty easy to see if you have a reputation or not. And what we're actually finding in the last 6, 8 to 10 months is that if you don't have any recent comments from people doing business with you, are they even in business? And even worse than that, if you have positive reviews from 5 years ago and you don't have any recently, it's like, what changed?
Yeah.
Did the product change? Did the people at the organization change? So I'm using a lens around this that could be for businesses, it could be for brands, it could be for individuals. So, the whole recommendations part of LinkedIn, think about that for a minute. There are people going to your LinkedIn profile, checking out recommendations and seeing who the people are that are recommending you. Better not be your, maybe your staff is okay if you're a manager, but it better not be your mom who's saying you do a great job. You know what I mean? Like,
my mom thinks I'm doing a fantastic job. I'll have you
That's
know.
the best part. Even in the, I love my mom, because even in the worst moments of my life, she still talked to me and loved me. So, as a buyer, you look at that, you go, that's not authentic.
Right.
Give me some people who've done business with you so that I can see if you're good or not. And as a salesperson in my career, I've always had those testimonials. I always had those people you're like, here in the good old days when we were younger, we had a brochure and we would hand that to them. Some people we coerced to get their picture and say nice stuff about us. But today you just give them your phone number, or even better than that, just have it online on a tab on your website of recommendations, and really that's what case studies and white papers and all that is that positive word of mouth about what people who've been there, done that, dealt with you or your brand are saying about you, to remove the fear of the prospect over whether they should give you some of their time. Not even spending money yet, by the way, Steve. I think that people have a lot of fear of, oh, is this going to be a painful meeting where I get no value? So, you have to remove that fear just to get the appointment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's clear why these online reviews are so important, whether they're negative, positive. What is your strategy to get more positive online reviews? Like what steps would you take to make that happen? How can a salesperson?
I just want to grab something from my drawer here, because I happened to be cleaning my drawer up the other day and I found something that I used back when I didn't have gray hair, and it's really cutting edge technology. It's a postcard, and it has all of the social media profiles, and it has a QR code. I don't even know if those are used anymore. Well, they are. LinkedIn uses them, but you've got to ask for that feedback.
Yeah,
and then direct them to where you want them to leave it. And I think that you use every tactic that you can. So, there are technologies out there where you could just text somebody and they can go through a workflow to leave you a positive comment. It's hard though. I'm not going to say that just because you have some technology and just because you ask people means you're going to get thousands of reviews. By the way, you probably don't need thousands of reviews unless you're a hotel or a car dealer or a restaurant. If you're a salesperson and you get 5, you're probably better than most individuals when it comes to those comments. But, this is a long drawn out way of me saying you got to beg for them.
Yeah.
And you have to, constantly make it a part of your workflow to get that positive sentiment. And then to get it online is even another stretch.
Yeah. I've always been surprised how few people actually will give you a review. Even if whether you ask for them or not, it's the tens of thousands of people that use Badger, we get so few reviews, and it's like, I'm just like, and when I talk to people about it, I know they love it. They tell me that, but they're just, I think we're just kind of people are exhausted with making reviews, and like everyone asks them to make reviews. So I think it's hard to get them to, I'm always surprised at how little interaction there is, like, or on this podcast, right? Like, if you look, there's not that many reviews on iTunes, but there's thousands and thousands of people that listen to every episode, but you know we nobody goes online and reviews it, right? Like, and so I think that's a challenge, and you're right. You just have to ask. You just have to beg, basically. You have to be like, "Hey, this is really important to let people know that this is a valuable product, or this is a valuable, resource, whatever it is that you're selling. Like, let people know by writing it up here." One thing that's funny, I saw the other day, someone had commented on I think it was our Facebook page. Yeah, it was our Facebook page, and I get those still. Like, if there's a comment on our Facebook page, like it pops to me from Badger, right? Like, I'm on that feed, and someone said something nasty about us. They were like, "Oh, I don't. This is just like Google Maps, and Google Maps is free." And then a bunch of our different random customers piled on his comment, and we're like, "No, it's not like Google Maps. It does this, and it does that, and it does this, and it does that." Like, and they were basically like, "Obviously, you don't understand what it does if you think it's Google Maps." But it was interesting to see the it was all on our Facebook page, but it was all like, it was someone who had looked at the product and didn't think it was valuable to them, and then like a bunch of people piling on that. And so I guess your online reputation, if you are doing a good job, feeds on itself in a way. And I don't know how you can capture that and put it in a bottle if you're a sales rep to get that authentic engagement. But like
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up, Steve, because I've had some businesses that have experienced exactly what you're talking about, where the community of raving fans, or God forbid if you had some people who weren't quite raving fans, they have a voice through the channels that exist today.
Yeah.
And it can go both ways. One of the, I've done a lot of presentations to businesses around why this is so important. And one of them we use as an example, I'm not talking out of school, because you just go on YouTube and probably find one of the presentations about a restaurant that we work with through one of our partners in Chicago. And a guy had dinner and got a rubber band in his angel hair pasta, went online and left a negative review on Yelp and on Facebook.
Yeah.
And on Facebook, there's this phenomenon called piling on, and you use the term, and it can be positive, and it also can be very, very negative. And that environment where your raving fans come to your defense when somebody says something crazy about your brand is a million times more effective than a business owner responding to a negative review.
Yeah, I think so.
Because that
all I can say, if I were in that restaurant as well, sometimes mistakes happen. The rubber band must have sprung, and we couldn't find it, and I don't know what happened, but obviously it's not one of our ingredients in our angel hair pasta. Here's like a gift certificate, but that's not as good as like 10 people who eat at the restaurant being like, "I eat here all the time. It's fantastic food.
Never had a problem.
No rubber bands.
You can digest the rubber band, or whatever,
Yeah. Well, no, I think and I think the way, the reason people are following our Facebook page, I suspect, is because we're putting useful things on there for them. Like, and it's articles we've written for field salespeople, or it's a resource we've created, like a video teaching them how to do this, that, or the other thing, or maybe it's this podcast. It's things like that we're posting on there. So I guess enough people were actually following us that then when someone did say their product is stupid, a lot of people were like, saw that and we're like, "No, it's not." And that was, so I guess that's how the strategy worked for us, is because we've been creating things of value for these people over, a decade. They then, when we needed them, they were there for us. Right.
No, that's exactly right. It's a great moment when that happens, for sure. Yeah. There also is nothing saying that you can't reach out to that tribe when you have something like that and ask for help.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't do that online, but if you had a way to communicate with the people that are in your inner circle, your best customers, your raving fans, I like to use that term, feel free to leverage that. I only bring that up because I remember one day, this is about 5 years ago, we were talking to businesses about taking positive sentiment online and amplifying it on your social media, which to me is just a no-brainer. And they were like, isn't that bragging? And I said, well, it's also known as marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good, and we don't do that, right? Like we should put links to our, put links to like positive reviews, or I guess we do put links to like if we make like a case study or something on a customer, like we put together a little write up, we'll link to that. But if someone makes a positive review on one of the software review sites, it's not a bad idea or I mean, we could just link to the whole software review site and be like, hey, check out all these great reviews. Like pointing people to that stuff is probably something that we should do that I'm not doing now.
We have a couple of our really smart young salespeople that crafted a hack here recently, and we have field sales and telephone sales, about 100 and was over 100 now on the various teams. And what they'll do at the end of a call, they'll send an email and they'll say, it was a great call today. Look forward to next steps. Just wanted to show you this, with a link in the email that now they've got to go through. Mm-hmm. and they see that positive comment from the person that left it, wherever it might have been. And it's just clever. A nice little reinforcement, especially if you've given a great presentation or you've done a great needs analysis and you've, all those things that salespeople should do, where you're talking a third of the time and the prospect's talking 2/3 of the time. And when you've done that and you've left a really good impression and you've delivered value, it's a great way to solidify that you really are that trusted expert.
So, and I love processes like this, that like you said, and just to remind people, George is like, he runs sales for a decent size software company and platform, 100 sales reps, obviously. Talk about how you, as a sales leader, sales manager, set up a process that gets your reps to do this. How do you embrace this digital transformation and train your sales team to do things like this? How do you roll that out?
Constant pressure. So you build a process, mm-hmm. and then you measure it and see if it's getting you the results that you want. And I've actually found less is probably more, but you've got to be at least doing the right things to get you the result. And what got you the result 6 months ago might not get you the result today, because we live in an ever-changing world. Mm-hmm. So whatever process is put in place, there has to be a measurement to make sure that it's being followed. And if you remember back to that discipline piece, it's hard because you're pulled in 50 different directions. Sales is having a routine in sales. You're probably going to be more successful. I think all of us that have been doing it for a while learned that a long time ago. But then what happens is organizations, as they grow, process just starts to creep in, and you're like, where did that come from? Oh, well, finance needs this one thing done, or marketing needs this one thing done. And the next thing you know, your sales reps are spending 40% of their time doing admin and process, and not doing the thing that they need to do, which is selling. A mentor of mine and a guest on my podcast a couple of years back, Steve Nudelberg, has this line where the perfect sales day is 60-30-10. So 60% of the time you're talking to customers and you're doing sales stuff, like mm-hmm. selling and presenting and needs analysis. Mm-hmm. 30% of the time you're learning how to be a better salesperson, and 10% of the time you're doing admin. And I think a lot of organizations,
I don't think anyone meets that goal.
No, but it's crazy that it isn't, because
maybe 30-10 the other way, but that's
no, exactly right. So we try not to put undue process in place, and we have individuals that are policing the process that are very good at that, and mm-hmm. a lot of times that's not a salesperson.
Right.
Salespeople that are good at it, they have to have some sort of attention to detail. You're never going to be good at sales, but when it comes to really ticking all the boxes and following all the steps, that's usually not a high-performing salesperson. I'm not saying all the time, because I know some very high-performing salespeople that are very detail-oriented. Mm-hmm. But if that's all you look for in your sales organization, I think you'll have a lot of vacancies.
I've got an interesting factoid about Badger. I don't have anyone on my sales operations team who wasn't first on my sales team or my customer success team. One of everyone in the sales operations group started as a salesperson or a customer success person. And so the people making the processes now and they really deeply understand the perspective of our salespeople. And I think that's kept us from processing ourselves to death.
Well, I'm glad that you made that statement, because that is definitely something that people should be very wary of as they build out a high-performing sales organization. I think that the reason why that works is because that person has some empathy for what it's like to be a salesperson.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
there is this, I worked in the radio business for years, and, I started as broadcaster, and then there's no money in that. So I became a salesperson. And the broadcast side, the people on air think salespeople make all the money and get to go to all the steak dinners. And then on the broadcast side, the salespeople think that the broadcasters don't really care about the clients. And, so there's always this tug of war that exists. But having people that are involved in the sales organization to execute what, the vision of what that organization is going to do, if they have some empathy, you're going to save yourself a lot of yelling matches and vigorous debate.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's a good time to jump into the next section of our show, sales in 60 seconds. So I'll ask you quick questions with quick answers, theoretically 60 seconds. So first, what is your number one tip for handling negative online reviews?
Answer them. Say you're sorry. So be Canadian. You say sorry a lot. So say you're sorry, whether you are or not, because it's not the place to get in an argument with an online reviewer. Mm-hmm. Arguing with a negative online reviewer is like fighting with a pig. You both get dirty and the pig likes it.
Yes.
I didn't know that I get to use that joke. Second step, leave some sort of marketing that negates what was said in the negative review. Something like, wow, that's interesting. We won customer service award for the last 3 years from the Chamber of Commerce. This must be an isolated incident. And now the final piece. My name is George. I own the place. Here's my cell number. Give me a call so I can solve the problem.
Yeah.
So the response can't come from a robot, and it can't be a form letter. That's why I hate these autoresponders that some technology companies have built for negative reviews. You might as well just send me a form letter. And I'm probably never going to do business with you again if you treat me that way. It has to be authentic. And the only way that you've got a shot at getting rid of that negative review is by talking to the person that posted it, because they're the one that can take it down. Now, there is one caveat to that. If the negative review uses any sort of vulgarity or has any sort of, racism in it or something like that, or breaks the terms of service of the review site, you can appeal to the review site to have it removed.
Clever.
So there's a few things. Responding to it is the key. And then the other piece is you can do some things where it breaks terms of service. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, when you're responding to a negative review, you are very likely not responding to the person that left it, because it's hard to talk to those people.
Yeah.
You're responding on behalf of the thousands of other people who are going to do research on you or your brand. And you're showing that you actually care enough to talk to all your customers, whether they're happy or not.
Yeah. And I think this is something that needs to be from the very top of an organization. I mean, even though, Badger Maps is a pretty big company at this point, I personally get notified of reviews, and we actually had a pretty good one recently. We had someone leave a negative review, and it was about an experience they were talking to one of our salespeople, and the salesperson thought they had hung up the phone, hadn't hung up the phone, and said something. I forget what it was exactly, but it was that guy was so effing boring, or so effing, it was impossible to teach that, so effing impossible to teach that guy stuff. Or I forget exactly what it was, but he basically really offended the guy. So I see the review, which is, so I see the review, but I can see the guy's name, right? And so I can just look him up in our CRM, and then I give him a call, and I was able to talk to him and apologize, and make sure he was taken well care of, and he did take the review down. But I think, the lesson, the lesson there is you've got to have someone very high up in the organization with a title, getting involved in these things, because then people do, like, they're like, okay, well, I had a bad experience, but these guys care. Obviously, this is important to them. They were very responsive, and like he offered to take their review down. I didn't twist his arm and do it or anything. He was just like, hey, I get it. I was probably a little angry. Everybody has a bad day, and so there was an important lesson there, that if you take this stuff seriously, you will, and people at the top of the organization take it seriously, you can improve your presence and not have as many negative online reviews, which are inevitable, right? Like, people, the bigger the company, people are going to have bad experiences. Balls can get dropped, things can slip through the cracks. The key is to make them right as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I think that the other piece is that we should understand as business owners or as sales professionals, when you ask for feedback for a net promoter score or something like that, and you're going to get the engaged user that's going to fill that thing out. What I like about online reviews, and I don't even mind negative reviews, because if there's a negative review left about an experience with one of our team, we're going to go deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, in order to know that there was something going on negative with one of our team members, I'd have to listen to hours upon hours of calls, which we're never going to do because we're all busy. You just wouldn't find out about it, and that problem would continue to persist. So, I'm using an example for the audience that's listening to this, which are sales professionals. But imagine if you built a product and you were able to find out before there was 2,000 of them out there in the universe that it wasn't working properly. Listening to that online sentiment of your users, buyers, customers is a really important piece. There's a lot of data around this, that in 3 and 4 star reviews, there are also product and service suggestions on how to improve your offering. In 1 and 2 star reviews, those exist as well. But 1 and 2 star reviews show you where you have broken process usually. Mm-hmm. And then in 5 star reviews, it's positive sentiment that you should amplify. So there's a lot of learnings within that. Keep in mind, Glassdoor and Indeed are 2 review sites that every business could be reviewed on. And the person there, the stakeholder there, is your human resources department, people ops. That department is the one that wants to be weighing in on the Glassdoor and the Indeed reviews.
Well, and I look at those all the time too. I mean, I think right. there's no better grading of my role than what shows up on Glassdoor. I mean, I definitely read every one of those and get ideas from that and learn from them. And fortunately, people really like working at Badger, but I consider that to be my report card, or I guess one of my most important, if not my most important report card.
No, agreed.
Because that says a lot about a company, right? Like, whenever you're looking at even to become a customer of a business, looking at their Glassdoor review, really, it's the writing on the wall, right? I mean, that's a very smart thing to do is look at a company's Glassdoor reviews. It's because the employees of a business will often say things about the product, or say things about the company, or say things about the future of the company. It certainly it lets you know the direction that the company's going.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Very powerful. That's one of the most powerful pieces of information in business around today is a company's Glassdoor profile, I think. Well, what would you say the most important review platforms are? Glassdoor, obviously, but what else is important to you, and what should salespeople keep an eye on in regard to their industry?
Yeah, it depends upon what our goal is, but I think that people often overlook those recommendations on LinkedIn if you're an individual. Having a personal brand Some organizations don't like that moonlighting thing where, no, I have my own management company and then I work for this other company and I'm pursuing this personal brand over here. I've always done a lot of public speaking, and I handle that through my management company. So I have a brand there, which I have a website, and I have a Google My Business profile, and I have Google My Business reviews. Now, those help your SEO rank, by the way, having a Google My Business profile. And so, if you're an individual that is a salesperson and you don't have that business piece, then you've got to rely on LinkedIn, and you got to rely on Facebook comments against your profile and things like that. But if you are able to build out that personal brand, which I believe that all salespeople should do. I've been professing for years that sales is like being an independent business person. If you treat it that way, the organization that you are selling for, they give you the inventory and they give you a place to work most of the time, and they give you, some infrastructure. But at the end of the day, you treat it like it's your own business. You're making an investment of amount of your time. You've got these customers that you're working with, and you got to treat them well so they'll come back. So having that brand where people can, now some organizations don't like that, but I'm a big believer in it. I've encouraged all of our salespeople to start thinking about what their brand is, because what we see time and time again, and when we're doing one-on-ones with reps, the managers are trained to say, okay, let's look at this call that you had with this customer. Now let's go to your LinkedIn profile and see who was on your LinkedIn profile that day. And it's like they were either there before the call or after the call. And that's why that thing's so important. That's why you should be, sharing information that the marketing department puts out. That's why you should write your own posts. That's why you should, because they're going there, and that's your virtual business card. And it does a lot more stuff than your business card did. So, I think that if you are a business owner, you've got to have reviews on Google, because that's going to help your search engine optimization. Plus, Google My Business is the place where people are making their decision. It's right at that zero moment of truth where you decide to spend money or not. Now, if you're an individual, then you have to work in that LinkedIn environment, and it's actually not even over polluted right now. Like Facebook, my mom is really good on Facebook, but I'm not selling anything to my mom. So I don't know. I haven't used my personal profile on Facebook in a long time, because I was not closing deals on Facebook. I was talking to people I went to university with, and you can tell a long time ago. So, I think that it really depends upon what your role is. Now, let's say you're a doctor and you're not on Rate MDs, and you're not on, that is vitally important to your business. And, we have lived in this space for a long time in our industry, and we work with a lot of health professionals. And they don't even know that they have a 3-star review on Rate MDs from 5 years ago. So, understanding what channels you could be listed on, run some Google searches on yourself, because that is your brand as a salesperson, and then figure out what would be the most appropriate channel for what you are doing.
Great advice. Is there a specific tool or strategy that you would recommend to listeners that help optimize their online presence? Is there if you were a field salesperson, are there any shortcuts or tricks to this trade?
There are lots of pieces of software that could help make social easier to do. And what I mean by that is, if you decide there's 5 different social channels that you need to post on, and you're doing it natively in each one of those 5 different applications, there are aggregators that will allow you to scale that work. A lot of those aggregators also give you the ability to go to some sort of a library to find relevant content that you can then make your own. When it comes to the review space, if you're a business owner, you need some sort of a aggregator of that data, because nobody, we talk about discipline quite a bit on this episode, but no business owner has the discipline to go to 7 different review sites every day, every week, every month to see what's being said about them. You just need to get an alert in your email so you can know what was posted there. That is an efficient use of your time.
I can't even think of the last time I went and looked at our reviews on like a software review website. I think if there were any problems, it would have floated to my attention. But I actually, it's probably been 2 years since I've gone to any of them and read the reviews.
And even beyond, so reviews are structured data points. So LinkedIn, we talked a lot about that. You log into LinkedIn, you see what's being said about you. But what if somebody wrote a blog? and they put it on their own website. It's out there in the middle of the ether, and somebody does a search for you, and they find that blog post, and it's negative.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, you know, I'm not as paranoid as I'm Googling myself every day. But there are tools that will allow you to set search parameters where you can find those comments that have been made.
Yeah.
That are not from a structured source. So it's not coming from Yelp, and it's not coming from Google, and it's not coming from Glassdoor. It's a blog on Joe Schmooley's website.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you can find it if you do a search. Okay, that's something that you need to be aware of as well. Now, it might be a positive blog. And again, I would reach out to that blogger and say, I want to amplify this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you just link it on your social or something like that. So
yeah,
as much as there's a protective measure where you want to know if there's a negative piece of information out there, there also is this enormous opportunity if you can find the positive pieces and reshare that information to your network.
Okay, that's great advice. Well, since you're the host of the podcast Conquer Local, what are the main points outside salespeople should focus on when selling to local businesses?
Wow, where do I start?
It's broad, I know. You get a minute. What is that?
A lot of outside salespeople over the last 8 years, and our organization was born about 10 years ago and made a decision to use channel sales. So we don't sell direct to SMB. We sell through a channel, whether that be a telco or a media company or an agency or independent software vendor. So I've had a chance to work with lots of outside salespeople in my career. I believe that, you know, it's a digital game nowadays. So having that digital profile is a really important piece of the puzzle. Use all the tools at your avail to work smarter and not harder. And back to your thing of, you know, we don't want undue process in what we're doing. So, you know, search out new opportunities, but make sure that they're adding value. You know, we've had a number of guests on the podcast where we ask questions like, what do you hate when a salesperson calls on you? And there's some real interesting answers. But one thing that really jumps out is salespeople that don't really understand their product and the value that it brings. And I don't really blame sales reps for that. I blame sales organizations and sales leadership for that. I also have a thing I've said, Steve, years ago, and I still say it today. There are no bad staff. There's just bad managers. Because if you had a bad staff member, then you should, you know, transition them back to society if you can't train them, and have them go do something else that they're better at. So yeah. I think that, you know, that we have a sales leadership issue right now in organizations. And those leaders need to use the technology at their avail to build better sales people and better sales experiences. And it's a very unique time that we live in right now where we have way too much information, way too much data. So you have to be able to mine through that and find the things where you can start to develop, you know, those professional sales reps.
Well, tell me, so I love to give people one thing to do, an actionable takeaway with, you know, from each one of these episodes. As an actionable takeaway, what should the field salespeople listening today do as a first step towards improving their digital presence?
Build an amazing LinkedIn profile and watch your revenue go up just from that one thing. The good news is all the work that you're going to do on LinkedIn to build out that profile can then be put onto a website, used on other social media channels, used for blogging, things like that. So it's, by the way, it's never done. It's an ongoing thing. I watch the views of my LinkedIn profile pretty much on a daily basis to see if I'm trending up or down. That'll give you an indication if the content that you're sharing on your LinkedIn profile is doing what it's supposed to do, drive additional eyeballs to your profile and to your brand. So it all starts there. I am quoting a number of people that I follow on a daily basis, Gary Vaynerchuk, Dennis Yu, you know, all of these social media experts are saying that LinkedIn is greenfield right now. Not too many people are using it. There's millions of users and they're like, no, it's not polluted like some of the other channels. You can still make an amazing impact on your business if you have that profile. So, you know, that is one takeaway that I would leave with your listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's great advice. Well, I'm going to attempt to summarize all of the wisdom that you've dropped upon us here today. Um, so every industry has gone through a digital transformation. Today, everyone has a virtual doorway, and it's important to know that each person knows a lot about you before they walk through your actual door and engage with your business. Buyers are smarter today about everything that they want to buy, and there are more and more things competing for their eyeballs and their time and their attention. And so salespeople need to bring that much more value to the table. A great online presence can help accelerate the sales process. This will help you speed up the qualification process since your value propositions are clear to that prospect before they walk through the door. You need to continuously adapt that digital presence that you have out there. Salespeople can improve their online presence in a variety of ways through blogging. You got to keep putting content out there that your audience wants to consume. You've got to have an up-to-date, clear value proposition on the company's website. Make sure it's just crystal what you do, and make sure the customer understands what you do and why it's valuable and why they need to do it now. What are they losing to not do it? Always be learning. You have to constantly learn new things and stay ahead of the curve. And therefore know what to put out there in your online presence. Positive word of mouth is very important and is amplified by the digital world. This is always one of the most important things in sales, but it's just that much more important now that everyone can anonymously talk and communicate with each other in the world. So these online reviews, you want to amplify the great ones and you want to address the negative ones. Make sure you always have recent reviews of your product or service that potential prospects don't wonder, these guys still in business? Is something different now? It seems like all their reviews are from 5 years ago, that sort of thing. You want to ask your customers for feedback, and you want to direct them where you want them to leave it. So if someone's pleased with you, if you've gone out of your way and done something great for someone, it's fair to ask them to, it's not begging, but you almost want to beg for it, I guess, is the advice here, to leave a review in those important places. Because, frankly, people just don't leave that many reviews. It's a busy world, and everyone's begging them to what is the phrase you always hear on YouTube? Like and click subscribe below, like and subscribe. Everyone's constantly hearing that, and so they don't do it that much on their own. Managers can work to revamp their company's digital profile and build processes in place with their teams to measure the response. They can make changes. You can measure the response. You can iterate, and that's a really important strategic thing that you need to be doing today. Don't underestimate how important Google reviews are. People, both the top of your funnel, first looking at your business, and late in the funnel thinking about purchasing, they're seeing those Google reviews. Google puts them right in your face. So don't underestimate how important that is. As a salesperson, you got to have a LinkedIn that's up to date, because and is a really outstanding profile and a great profile, because it really acts like your virtual business card. Everyone's welcome to check out I've done a ton of work on my profile over the years, and I've taken this super seriously, like my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to check mine out if you want some examples, some key things that I do. Make sure you're talking about your value proposition at the top. Make sure you have great content that shows why the product or service is valuable. Videos and really like connect LinkedIn right there, kind of attached to the profile. Reviews are really important, although I don't do a good job of that. All my reviews are from employees, not customers. So that's one of my takeaways from what you were saying, George. I've got to work on that. But yeah, it's really important to have that LinkedIn profile built out and do a great job on it, because people look at it all the time. George, Tell me, where can listeners read more about your work? Where can they reach out to you?
Sure. Especially LinkedIn, I guess, is probably the best place, but also you can find us at conquerlocal.com. And that's where the link to the podcast is as well. Shameless plug.
No, absolutely. That's great. People should check that out. It's really cool. Well, this has been a great episode of Outside Sales Talk. George, I really appreciate your time. If anyone who's listening can think of other sales reps that would benefit from learning what George has had to say today, share the love and forward this episode on to them. And take care until next time, everybody.